The investigation was announced quietly. On March 11, 2026, the U.S. Trade Representative launched Section 301 investigations into 16 of the world's largest economies, covering 22 manufacturing sectors. New tariffs could arrive as early as this summer. This is not a sudden development. The signals were visible for months, and the window between an early warning signal and a tariff is the most valuable period in supply chain risk management. To understand why this matters, we need to understand the legal instrument being used. Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974 gives the U.S. Trade Representative the authority to investigate foreign trade practices that are unreasonable, discriminatory, or that burden U.S. commerce, and to impose tariffs or other trade restrictions in response. This is the same mechanism that produced more than $370 billion in tariffs on Chinese goods between 2018 and 2020. Those tariffs are still in place today. The reason Section 301 is being used now is directly connected to what happened on February 20th, 2026. On that date, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down the administration's IEEPA-based tariff program. IEEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, had been the primary legal vehicle for broad tariff imposition. The court's ruling removed it. Section 301 was the most obvious replacement. It is legally durable. It has survived court challenges for decades. It produces sector-specific tariff lists. And it has a well-established procedural process that gives it legitimacy that IEEPA lacked. The administration is not retreating from its trade agenda. It is rebuilding it on a more defensible legal foundation. The scope of this investigation is significant. The 16 economies under scrutiny are China, the European Union, Japan, South Korea, India, Vietnam, Taiwan, Mexico, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, Singapore, Bangladesh, Norway, and Switzerland. These are not peripheral trading partners. They represent the core of most global manufacturing supply chains. If your organization sources from Asia, Europe, or Mexico, and most do, you have direct exposure. The 22 sectors named in the Federal Register notice are equally broad: steel, aluminium, automotive, batteries, semiconductors, solar modules, chemicals, plastics, machinery, robotics, electronics, glass, cement, paper, non-ferrous metals, processed food and beverages, energy goods, machine tools, satellites, ships, and transportation equipment. To put this in practical terms, if your supply chain touches manufacturing anywhere in the world, at least one of your Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 suppliers operates in one of these sectors. This is not a targeted investigation. It is a structural review of global manufacturing. Here is what makes this moment instructive beyond the immediate tariff risk. The March 11th announcement did not emerge from nowhere. 3 early warning signals were clearly visible in the preceding 90 days, and each one was publicly available. First, the Supreme Court's February 20th ruling on IEEPA. When the primary tariff mechanism is invalidated, a durable replacement is a near certainty. Section 301, which has survived every legal challenge brought against it, was the most obvious candidate. Second, USTR communications over the preceding 90 days consistently framed structural overcapacity as the central trade grievance. The language in the March 11th Federal Register notice mirrors prior USTR testimony almost word for word. The signal was in the vocabulary. Third, the 16 named economies represent the core of most global manufacturing supply chains. This was not a China-only action. The breadth of the target list signaled a systemic trade posture, not a bilateral dispute. Horizon scanning is not about predicting the future. It is about reading the signals that are already present. So, what does proactive risk management look like right now? Here is the three-part framework. Step 1. Conduct a likelihood and impact assessment. Map your Tier 1 and Tier 2 suppliers against the 22 sectors and 16 economies named in the investigation. This is not a theoretical exercise. It is an exposure map with direct financial implications. For each supplier in a named sector and economy, quantify your landed cost sensitivity to tariff scenarios. The 2018 to 2020 China tariffs ranged from 7.5% to 25% on specific product categories. Model both ends of that range for your highest exposure categories. The goal of this step is not to predict which tariffs will be imposed. It is to know, before the announcement arrives, exactly where your cost base is vulnerable and by how much. Step 2. Implement structured horizon scanning. The April 15th public comment deadline and the May 5th to 8th hearings are not administrative formalities. They are intelligence sources. The industries that file formal comments will signal which sectors face the highest tariff risk. The testimony presented at the May hearings will indicate which economies are most likely to face punitive measures. This is publicly available intelligence, and most supply chain professionals are not reading it. Set a calendar reminder for April 15th and May 5th. Monitor the Federal Register and the USTR press releases. The signal-to-noise ratio in these documents is high. Step 3. Run your scenario models now, not after the tariff list is published. Model 2 scenarios: a targeted tariff on your highest exposure product category and a broad tariff on your primary sourcing geography. For each scenario, identify your mitigation levers: dual sourcing, nearshoring, inventory positioning, contract renegotiation, and their lead times. The critical insight here is timing. Mitigation options that are available today: a dual source qualification, a nearshore supplier assessment, a bonded warehouse arrangement, may not be available 6 weeks after a tariff announcement when every competitor is pursuing the same options simultaneously. The window between an early warning signal and a tariff is the most valuable period in supply chain risk management. It is when options are still open, when suppliers are not yet overwhelmed with rerouting requests, when freight rates have not yet spiked, when your procurement team has time to think strategically rather than react operationally. That window exists right now, between the March 11th announcement and whatever tariff list emerges from the May hearings. Here are 3 concrete actions for this week. First, pull your supplier list and cross-reference it against the 22 sectors and 16 economies. Identify your top 5 exposure points. Second, monitor the April 15th comment filings and the May 5th to 8th hearings. Treat them as intelligence, not bureaucracy. Third, run your 2 tariff scenarios, targeted and broad, and identify which mitigation lever has the shortest lead time for each. These are the building blocks to get you started and help you build the required resiliency into your supply chain. If you want to build this kind of analytical capability systematically, the frameworks to move from reactive cost absorption to proactive strategic resilience, that is exactly what we cover in our Geopolitics for Supply Chain Managers course, available on Udemy. The link is in the description, along with an exclusive discount code for viewers of this channel. Subscribe to Supply Chain Academy for briefings like this one every time a geopolitical development has direct supply chain implications. Like this video if it was useful, and share it with your colleagues in supply chain management that should also be reading these signals. We will see you in the next briefing.